McMullen here with you on Birds 365. We thank Martin Frank for hopping in. We got off on a little bit of a running back tangent there with Martin, and it seems, unfortunately, for the Miles Sanders fans out there, we're kind of 3 for 3, thinking that Miles is not going to be back as the running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. We ran down the other guys who are available in the free agent class this year. Jacoby Brissett only led the league in rushing. Saquon Barkley, one of the biggest playmakers. Tony Pollard, who that knucklehead Skip Bayless said, I'll take Pollard over the Denver running back. Come on, stop it. He really said that he would take Tony Pollard over Christian McCaffrey. I like Pollard. He's a good back. I would say Miles is probably the 4th rated running back, with Pollard being 3rd and Miles being 4th. But there's some other guys out there that are going to get more money than him. Who's going to pay Miles? If we're all banking on Miles being
that's
elsewhere,
what I'm saying. That's why I brought it up. I mean, there are very few teams to begin with willing to pay significant money, and I call them dumb teams, to a running back. So that number is very small to begin with. And then you got to knock off the players that are better than Miles, or who are thought to be better than Miles. And all of a sudden, there's not 16 teams willing to pay running backs, Jody. There's like 3 or 4, and that number's declining every year. Who knows? Maybe everybody got smart after watching Isaiah Pacheco in the Super Bowl. I think it's more likely than people think. I don't think it's likely. I still say it's 85-90% Miles is gone. But there's a slight chance that he doesn't find what he thinks he's going to find on the open market and comes back to the Eagles, and the Eagles say, all right, we'll give you a 1-year deal for $3-4 million with a lot of incentives that if you perform, there's a slight chance that could happen.
Now, if you're Howie Roseman, now there's both good and bad with the answer to this question. 2020 hindsight. I would have liked to have signed James Bradbury to more than a 1-year deal. Now, I'm sure Bradbury only wanted a 1-year deal so that he could get back out onto the open market. That might have been a non-starter if Howie had said, listen, we're going to bring you in. We need a little bit more than just 1 year out of you. But we'll give Howie the benefit of the doubt there that was a Bradford edict, that he wasn't going to do so. Kaiser White. I'd like to know that we got Kaiser White locked in this year, knowing that Edwards could walk away. Didn't get that done. I don't know how far they did or didn't get with a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson conversation. We know they acquired him with only 1 year to go. We know that the Saints were willing to trade him because they talked to him about an extension, and it went nowhere fast. So there's a reason why they got all these guys on the free agent list this year. It's because they all got to their final year of their contract without the Eagles getting an extension done with them. Miles comes back. Do you hammer a 2-year deal down his throat and say, listen, you want to come back? You love Philadelphia. We kind of love you, but we're looking to do a 2-year deal here so that you get coverage on the back end, so you don't have to go through the process again next year of figuring out who's going to be your running back going forward?
No, I think the only way he's back is with the 1-year deal. And that's part of it. I mean, that part of it's baked in the fact that they don't want to spend a lot of money at that position. You know,
maybe Howie loves those disposable years on the back end so he can spread out the cap hit for as long as humanly possible.
Well, yeah, he does. But in the case of, that's with big money contracts, you don't have to do that with the lesser money deals, and that's where Miles would be if he's coming back. That would be a lesser money deal. So you're not worried about all the Boyd years on the back end. You're worried about Boyd years for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Players like that are going to cash in. The only way he's back is at a significant discount if he doesn't find what he wants. I'm looking up the market values, Spotrack's market values. They have Miles 2 years at $14.4 million. So $7.2 million a season. If he gets that, he's not coming back. You know,
I agree.
Pretty simple. You know, if that's not there, and Martin made a good point with the 2 years, you know, he's going to want a 2-year deal. I don't think anybody's given Miles Sanders more than 2 years. I don't think there's some dumb teams. I don't think they're that dumb. If that contract's not there, maybe he comes back. But 2 years, over $7 million a year, no, I don't think he's coming back. And I looked up Kaiser White. They got 2 years, 8.5 million for Kaiser. He's not coming back if that's what he gets.
8.5 each or 8.5 total?
8.5 each, 17 total.
Yeah, after playing 1 year for $3 million.
Yeah, no way.
He had that kind of a year. He had that good a year.
But that's the thing. Everybody had a career year, Jody. Everybody on this stinking defense with the worst defensive coordinator in the history of the mankind had a career year. Almost every single one of them.
So let me ask you this, and I've been meaning to ask you this. I've had it on my show sheet for 3 days now. Edwards and Kaiser White are both free agents. We know that Nakobe Dean, the Eagles think highly of him, and he will slot into one of those two positions. If they re-sign one and the other one walks, and you're saying you're not sure the Eagles can put a value on Nakobe Dean, on Kaiser White, like Pro Football Focus is suggesting he should get on the open market. So if Edwards is coming back, what's their number on Edwards, by the way? If Kaiser White's is that high, Edwards is better than he is, so it's got to be higher.
4 years, $48 million for TJ.
That's going to take a heavy swallow by the Eagles, who do not usually like to put that kind of value into the linebacker position.
Yeah. So they can only sign one of those guys, and I don't know if they want to pay that money to TJ, to be honest. It's going to be interesting. But they're certainly not keeping both. And it can go either way. If Jonathan Gannon, for instance, wants to pay that money for TJ and say, hey, come run my defense here. The Eagles might keep Kaiser and let Nakobe play middle linebacker. If not, they'll keep TJ and let Nakobe play weak side linebacker. So, they'll keep one, but they're not keeping both.
And the other thing about the Eagle linebackers this year, this falls under the career year type category. Neither one of them missed any time either. They're out there for almost every damn snap. The only time they ever come off is when they're down to one linebacker and they're in their dime package, and I got secondary guys all over the place because the other team's at a 5 wide receiver set. Otherwise, Edwards and White were out there for every single snap. They just never got hurt. So one thing we didn't find out about the Eagles this year was what is truly their depth at the linebacker position, because they didn't need to find out, because those guys were A, that good, and B, that healthy. We know Dean is going to step into one of the two spots. Does either Sean Bradley or Ellis have any chance of being a guy who's playing something other than special teams last year? Do they like the backup linebackers who never get a sniff? Shoot, Nakobe Dean almost never played from the line of scrimmage this year. Certainly those other two guys only got in tiempo de garbage when the game was already decided. Do they like either one of those guys enough to give them a chance to compete for a job next year?
Not for a starting job. No.
Number one backup linebacker.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, Christian Ellis was quite the find for them when they did have the slight improvement in special teams later in the season. A lot of that had to do with, giving him a chance. So they liked him from that perspective. But no, they're not starting level players. And that's part of the difficulty of this. All of a sudden the attrition and it boggles down. And if you do get an injury next year, and it could be TJ, it could be Kaiser, if one of them are back, as you mentioned, that's another part of the Eagles 14-3 season, the star aligning. They were relatively healthy.
Yeah.
I don't Yeah, I don't think it would have been, N'Kobe's got talent and obviously played at a high level in college, but you would have had some startup costs there if you were forced into the lineup. So once you start getting farther down the list to the Christian Ellis's, the Sean Bradleys, whomever, um, yeah, wouldn't have been as good. Let's put it that way. So, uh, yeah, I no, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. But there's other ways they're going to draft a line. And I'm looking at Pro Football Focus while I'm saying this. They have TJ at 3 years, 13.5 million a year. And again, that's even if you get the one less year, it's a big matzo ball, as Jerry Seinfeld would say, especially at that position for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you still have people today say TJ can't cover, TJ can't do this because he's undrafted. You know, it's going to be interesting. That might be the most interesting decision of all. There's splashier decisions, but that might be the most interesting decision of all. TJ Edwards.
And I think it really will come down to dollars and cents. You and I are both TJ Edwards fans. I was the guy who suggested last year before they extended him for this year. You know how he loves doing that get the contract off the table thing. Why haven't they done it with TJ Edwards when he got off to as good a start as he did last year? And shoot, 3 weeks later, they had a contract done with TJ Edwards for this season, this past season. And you've been talking him up for over a year now, that he is underrated and underappreciated just because he wasn't drafted, which I know annoys me. I think even more so than you. You kind of accept the fact that your resume is your resume and you're held to it forever. I say at some point, you got to forget where you were or weren't drafted. You should purely be judged by what you do on the field in the NFL, and pedigree still holds sway, which I think is ludicrous, ridiculous, and stupid. But it's all going to come down to money. I think they want him back. I think they like him. I think they'll go to a certain length to try and keep him. But if the market explodes on him, we were just talking about running backs and the fact that the league has come back to the pack and that there's only a handful of teams that are willing to actually sink over $10 million per into a running back. What do you think the league's thought process is on linebacker? Are there more teams like the Eagles or less like the Eagles that are so upfront and defensive backfield minded that the linebacker is becoming
I think the off-ball linebacker, not edge rusher, because again, labeling is part of the problems as well. Like I hate when people call Hassan Reddick a linebacker. Now, theoretically, if you pull up the Eagles roster, it'll say linebacker. So I get why people do it, but it's a different position than off-ball linebacker. They do not value off-ball linebackers. It's the running back of the defense in the NFL. Just what it is. That's
right. But do you think the rest of the league, the other teams in the league,
for the most part,
if we're now suggesting that everybody's kind of caught up, that says you just can't pay a running back that money, linebackers fall into
I
that
don't
same
think
category?
it's as bad as running back. I think there's more teams willing to say this guy's a pretty good player, whether it's Bobby Wagner, Fred Warner, people like that, and say even Roquan Smith is a top 10 pick. I bring up a lot. Devin White in Tampa Bay. I think there's more teams willing to do it, probably in the 10 range as opposed to 5 or below with running back. But it is shrinking yearly. And I don't think it's changing. I think it's going in a bad direction for those off-ball linebackers.
But I think you are right. One thing that you got to keep your eye on, even if the rest of the league is a little skittish on paying linebackers, maybe Jonathan Gannon walks into the general manager's office and says, you got to get me this guy. If we're going to overspend in an area, I'm telling you, he'll be our defensive leader. He'll be our take charge guy. It's worth going above and beyond our comfort level. If TJ Edwards is not a Philadelphia Eagle, I would probably bet good money on him being an Arizona Cardinal. I think you're right about that. I think that Gannon will go in and fight for his former linebacker.
Yeah, it's a possibility. You know, I'm looking at some other valuations. Miles is 3 years, $7.5 million. No way he's coming back with 3 years. That's PFF versus Spotrac, Spot Rack, whatever it's called. I apologize. They have Kaiser White much less. I thought that was way high. So Spot Rack was what I was talking about originally. They had Kaiser 2 years, $8.5 million. That shocked me. Pro Football Focus, which is our buddy Brad Spielberger, we'll have to get him on the show when we come back, has Kaiser at 2 years at $4 million per year. That to me makes more sense. I think that is more likely to be the end game for Kaiser White.
Yeah, I think you a fan of Nick Virgil? Linebacker?
No, not at all. You don't want Nick Vigil.
Nick Vigil was playing for the Cardinals last year. I can see TJ Edwards slotting in and replacing him next year. That's an investment.
Another guy we haven't talked about is Epsy. 2 years, $6.75 million per year. He's not coming back at those numbers. If that's the case, he's not coming back.
Yeah, I think that number's a little high. I'd be surprised if he get that. Again, we're going to pin everybody to Gannon. The Gannon's going to come in here and raid the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think he likes Epsy too. Will he go to the wall for Epsy like he would go for?
No, I don't think so.
No. I can't.
But I do think he'll get an opportunity to be a starter somewhere.
Well, he should. He was a starter here on a defense that was number one against the pass in the league. Why the hell wouldn't he get a chance to start somewhere?
Well, he wasn't great, but he wasn't bad, as you mentioned, and the team success was good despite the narrative around Philadelphia. The team success, as you mentioned, number one pass defense. And by the way, you talk about TJ. Marcus is the guy who never left the field, literally never left the field. Played 99% of the snaps. Yeah, he'll get an opportunity. And he's going to be difficult to keep as well. Very difficult.
And the thing about if they get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson signed, Reed Blankenship did step in and play well enough.
Well, that's part of it too. We should have brought up him. That's my fault as one of those second-year players. Again, just because he's undrafted, he's another guy. He's waiting. So you got to sign two. You can only sign one. You want CJ, and then you plug in Reed Blankenship at the other safety spot.
He played well enough because of injury with GJ going down that I think you have pretty good confidence that he can be one of your starting safeties next year. Mac guys, McDonald and McMullen hanging with you on Birds 365. We will be joined by another Eagle insider, good as it gets, from NBC Sports Philly, Dave Zangaro, up next here on Birds 365.